it to everybody as well, so that you have this as a resource if you do happen to have any questions. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is the service learning. So service learning, now we've got most of our CP students are within the LEAP pathway, where you're doing the either health and wellness or sports management with Ms. Glover and Ms. Tucker. So in years past, your service learning has kind of been incorporated within that particular program. So for example, you've got some certifications that you do. You also have a lot of events that you plan, things that you do in elementary schools, the leadership camp that's run in the summertime, as well as the dance-a-thon where you raise money for the children's charities. So usually that's where a lot of your service learning comes from. The reason why I want to address this year is because obviously due to COVID and everything that's been happening, we haven't been able to run any kind of events. So it is important that you do get in your service learning hours within the 2 years of this program. So you have up until March of grade 12 to complete this. Now, this is somewhat similar to CAS for the diploma and the certificate students. The difference, though, is that here you actually do have a certain number of hours that you have to complete. So it's only 50 hours, 50, and anything that you have done since September of grade 11 can count for your service learning. So I'm just going to go over what some of those expectations are here. So it's engaging with your community, showing some civic responsibility. There's also a reflection process that you have to go through, and I'll show you how you do that on ManageBack, and then improving yourself and the world. Okay, so the requirements, as I said, is 50 hours over a year and a half, starting from September in grade 11 and ending around March of your grade 12 year. You are going to keep track of everything in a portfolio. And you are meeting with me either, so this would count, for example, as a meeting where we talk about different things like that a few times over the year and a half. If you're within LEAP, then you'd also be meeting, obviously, with Ms. Tucker and Ms. Glover to go over some of those requirements that you're doing there. And you want to make sure, this is a big part here, that it is related to your career-related study. So that corresponds to the co-op placement that you are involved in. So I know that some of you have been in co-op this year, and obviously co-op is a little bit different because of COVID. Some of you have gone out to placements, but some of you have been in virtual placements. So you want to make sure that some of these service learning is related to something that you've learned or something that you're doing within your co-op placement. So there are 5 learning outcomes that you need to check off at some point within those 50 hours that you complete. Identifying all of your strengths and your areas of growth, participating in, and this is where there's a lot of flexibility. So your service learning can either be by yourself, or you can do it with a group of people. So right now with COVID, some of your service learning activities may be more individual just because of the nature of what we're involved in right now. But if we're back in school and anything that you do next year in grade 12, it sounds like we're going to have a semi-normal year, not like last year, but semi-normal. So you can do stuff within the school, volunteering in clubs and teams, all of that kind of stuff can work towards your service learning. You want to show some skills and the challenges of working with other people. And a big one here is showing an understanding of global issues. So that means taking something that you're learning within, say, the school community and how that can impact the global community as well. And then last one is considering any consequences and ethics when carrying out your service experiences. So there are 5 different learning stages within service learning, and this is what the process that you're kind of going through to make sure that the task that you're doing can work for service learning. So what's the community need? How does it match your interests? and who will you be working with in the community. And then after that, you have your preparation. So this is what you're going to do to prepare to work through that particular service learning experience. What is your role and responsibility? How long is it going to take you to do this? And do you need any resources to help you undergo that task? We're going to talk a little bit in a second about whether it is direct or indirect service. And then are you going to work by yourself or with somebody else or with a group of people? Once you have completed the service learning task, you're going to go through a reflection, and this is going to happen on ManageBack. So what did you learn? What benefits can you provide? And how did you feel? Did you make a difference in your community? And then demonstration is showing all of these previous 4 stages in your portfolio. There is also something called a service learning project. So you can do a series of experiences, which are shorter things in duration, or you can do a project, which takes a little bit more time and a little bit more planning. So the project can be done collaboratively. And it's something that meets some kind of a community need. So for example, if you find that there is some kind of a charity that needs something, so CCH is great for all of this stuff. We have all of our coat drives and when we donate to the food bank, things like that. So your service learning project could be organizing that particular experience. So your project could be a series of experiences, so a whole bunch of experiences that are related together, or it can just be one large project. So you need to show some initiative, and then you're going to develop some kind of a skill. So communicating with other people, cooperating, working collaboratively. You'll see that all of these things are probably things that you are already doing or have done in the past. It's just now taking that and then documenting it. So as I said before, there are different types of service. So there is direct service where you can work directly with people, animals, or the environment. So if you are helping to tutor, say, another student, someone that's younger than you, helping them out with a subject, you cannot get paid for this though. So this would be volunteering that. Working at an animal shelter, planting a garden. Okay, so this is a direct type of service because you are directly working with people or the environment. An indirect service means that you are not necessarily working with the people that you're serving, but your actions are benefiting the community. So for example, if you're helping with the coat drive, so people have brought all the coats to school and now you're helping to sort them, and then you are helping to give them to different places in the community, that would be indirect. Advocacy, so this is raising awareness about a particular issue. So you can have some kind of a campaign. So we have had anti-bullying campaigns. These are usually led by student council. So if you are a part of student council and you were a part of this at some point, then absolutely you can include this as part of your service learning. And then finally, research. You are collecting information from different sources, and then you're trying to influence something within our community. So these are some examples again, trying to reduce graffiti, bus shelters or public places. So you have to research that particular problem and then write letters or talk to the community politicians to see if something can be done about that. Okay, so some examples of service learning. It has to be something that is ongoing. So again, you've got that 18 months to complete it. You can do something within our school or within our community. It can be something that's based on an immediate need, so something that the community needs or the school needs right away. So that could just be, say, a single experience. You can go through some fundraising. You can be an entrepreneur. You can kind of come up with some kind of new idea. We've had in the past students that have worked with organizations internationally to raise money for, say, building a school somewhere or getting clean drinking water, and then all of your typical things that you would do to volunteer. So in ManageBack, I'm just going to actually bring you to ManageBack here. So in ManageBack, now my screen looks slightly different than yours, but when you log in, you'll see at the top here all the different parts of the career-related program that you are responsible for. So what we're looking right now is the service learning. And again, when you log in, you won't see all these people, you'll only see yourself. So Alexa, I think you're on here. I'm just going to use you as an example on here. So for service learning, what you're going to do is you are going to click on add a service. And here's where you will input all of the information. So you're going to type in what it is. So what is it that you've done? So let's say, for example, Alexa did some tutoring. If this is your project, so that means it's a slightly bigger task, then you would click on the project here. And then how is it, or who are you affecting here? Is it something you're doing within the school, the community, within our city, or something international? So it's just like a little checkbox. So this would be maybe school-based. And you can choose more than one depending on how it's affecting you. And then how many hours are you spending? So because we are tutoring, this is a direct service. So let's say, for example, I do this 1 hour a week and I'm doing this for, I don't know, the duration of an octomester. So that's 5 weeks. So I can type in that this is 5 hours. Here you have your date. So when did you start it? When did you end it? Your supervisor name. So maybe this is for, in this case, it's tutoring. So maybe the name of the parent. If you're doing something within our school, if you're doing something with one of our clubs or our teams, this could be a teacher's name. And then their email. The reason why you're putting in their email and their phone number is because your advisor will get an email and they will be filling out just a comment about what it is that you've done. Okay, now I'm not going to click this here because this is going to add this particular service, but you can click on add a service and then this will then pop up in your ManageBack. Well, got to start from the beginning. Does this look big to you guys or is it small like it is for me? I'm not sure how big you guys can see this. Okay, that's a little bit better on my end. Okay, so this is that screen where you're going to complete the requirement for each activity that you do. And then once you are finished that, there's a space for you to complete your reflection. So you'll see that there's another tab here that says reflections and evidence. So this is where you will type in what it is that you did, what kind of learning outcomes that you achieved from this. You can also add in here, there's spaces where you can add stuff. So if you took pictures of some kind of evidence of what you did, you can add those pictures there as well. Okay, then you would click on add new entry. And then finally, your supervisor will be emailed automatically for them to put just a brief description of your progress, your effort, and your commitment, and then they can send that away. Okay, so that is the end of the service learning portion. Are there any questions right now? You can raise your hand, you can type it into the chat, you can turn on your mic, up to you on what you want to do. So any questions about expectations for this service learning? Okay, I don't see any questions here. So we're going to move on to the reflective project. Sorry, just getting everything situated here. Okay, here we go. So with the reflective project, so for those of you that are in LEAP, again, this is something that you have pretty much mostly completed when you were in your sports and exercise health science class with Miss Glover. I walked into your class a couple times. We talked about stuff, and you have submitted it, but you do still have an opportunity to make some changes if that is something that you want to do. Okay. For the students that are in the STEM, there's 4 of you right now. So you guys have, for the most part, written a first draft of this. So this is just to go over the expectations to make sure that when you wrote it, you covered the essential criteria for this so that you will do really well when it is assessed. So first of all, it's an extended piece of work. So in terms of, it's very similar to the extended essay for the diploma students that are going through IB diploma, but it's not as long. So here you are focusing though on an ethical dilemma. And this ethical dilemma is something that is raised during your co-op placement. So something that you have come across, and being in your co-op placement, you're working with people that are obviously very experienced in that particular field. So they may also be able to help you come up with that particular ethical dilemma. You do have to do research, so some primary research with primary sources like journal articles, and you are going to develop critical and creative thinking skills. So the overview, you should be spending about 50 hours in total. So that is going through the entire process. So that means doing research, writing it, all of that stuff like that. There's also reflections that you have to do. And it should be related to your career-related study as well as your IB diploma courses. So for the STEM students here, so you're taking a combination of some math and science courses. It should be related to those classes that you're taking as well as your co-op placement. Excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze there. Your ethical dilemma. Okay, so this is probably the most difficult part, which is coming up with this ethical dilemma that you want to study. So you are going to choose some kind of area of interest that you've come across in your career-related study or your co-op placement, and you are going to do some research with your local community, so within our city, as well as with the people that you're working with at your placement, and then see how that reaches with the global community as well. And you're going to apply this ethical dilemma to a real life situation. Now, a big thing, and I commented on the LEAP students when you guys submitted your reflective projects, I commented on for the bulk of you how you need to include a cultural perspective. So what that means is, how does your particular ethical dilemma affect people from other cultures? Okay, so you have to kind of bring that in there into your particular topic. So with your research, I know Ms. Glover has gone over a whole bunch of places that you can get some primary research. We are trying to get a database right now, hopefully for September, that has an endless supply of top-notch journal articles. So usually when you're searching up a journal, some of you may be familiar with things like PubMed. When you do research on something like PubMed, you find this amazing journal article, you open it up, and because you don't have any rights to it, all you see is the abstract. You don't actually get the entire article. So we're trying to get a database, get the board to approve this massive database that has all sorts of information in there, which is great for research. Note some key phrases. So this is in your research, your preliminary research, which again, most of you have finished already. And then you need to formulate a question. Okay, so your question needs to include the ethical dilemma, and your ethical dilemma should have 2 sides, at least 2 different sides to the story. So I'll give you an example of one that was done for business. So one of our students was working in a business placement where they had to develop software for a company. And the ethical dilemma was, let's say, for example, the deadline that the company that this was for, they needed it for today. Okay, so let's say it was due today and the software company was working through it, but they were unable to reach the deadline today. Now, with school, if you don't reach your deadline, you lose marks, right? But when you're talking about companies, if a company doesn't have something rolled out on the day that they have it, that means that they're losing out on money, and that gets expensive. So the dilemma here is, do we provide the software to this company today when it was due, but it's not complete? Okay, so it's not how we wanted it to be, it's not complete. Or do we talk to the company and say, well, I know it's due today, but because you made some changes and we went through some hiccups and some glitches, we'd like to give you the full product, but it won't be ready for another week, another month, something like that. So there's your ethical dilemma. It has two sides to the story, to the problem. And then you need to go and find good research on both sides of that. So that means that you are finding some real life examples of how companies maybe dealt with both of those. What are the monetary implications of that? What you have to make sure that you do not do, though, is give your particular opinion. This is not an opinion article, so it's not like I feel that, you know, we should always meet the deadline. It's not your opinion, it's an ethical dilemma. This is a research paper. So you need to have ideas to back up both sides, or maybe there's a third side to this particular dilemma. You need research from everywhere. So again, your opinion doesn't really come into play for any of this. So some things to keep in mind when you're doing your reflective project. Your title has to be in the format of a question. Okay, so you need to make sure that you are asking a question in your title, and it has to be interrogative. So that means that you're asking a question, you're not describing the situation. Is there more than one right answer? So if you're finding that there's only one answer to this particular question, then there's not an ethical dilemma in place. So that's not a good topic for you to choose. You want to fully explain the background of your particular ethical dilemma at the beginning of your reflective project, and then throughout it, you will analyze the different viewpoints. Again, big one here, have you shown how different community or cultural perspectives with respect to the ethical dilemma are raised? So I think somebody from this class, or I'm not sure if it was this one or the grade 12s, was talking about euthanasia. So euthanasia is obviously a hot topic, but different cultures may actually have different viewpoints on that. So it's bringing in that cultural perspective. And do you have different perspectives? That's the big part of this, because it's an ethical dilemma. You need to have at least two different perspectives here. Do you have credible, well-chosen facts and data and examples? Okay, so this comes from your research. And is your particular viewpoint clear? So you have to make sure that you're not identifying what you technically believe, but you have to make sure that you are giving good evidence on all sides of that particular dilemma. And then do you ultimately come up with some kind of an answer to your title? And then you have to make sure that you have citations. So IB is actually not very sticky on what method that you use to cite your work. So there's MLA, there's APA, there's all sorts of things. You can have footnotes, you can have embedded citations. As long as you are consistent throughout your paper, the format of your references is actually not important. Okay, so if, you know, in English you were told to do it in MLA, but I know in science we like APA. If there's one method that you like over the other, that's fine. The only important thing is that you have your citations, okay, that you have information that is properly documented. Okay, now most people have chosen to do an essay, and that's completely fine, but just know that an essay is not the only way to submit this. If you do decide to do an essay, you have to have a maximum of 3,000 words. So at the end of your paper, you should put in how many words that you have. So these are things to keep in mind, especially for those of you that have already finished this based on your LEAP course. If you have gone over the 3,000 words, you're going to have to pare it down. The other option is to do an essay that is slightly shorter and then have another format on top of that. So your essay is up to 2,000 words. The other 1,000 words can be in one of the following formats. You can have a play. So that means you would include the script of the play. So you need to include your dialogue. You can have music, sound effects. You can record it. You can make it a video. You can make it sound, all of that stuff. You can have a short film, make it a documentary, a drama, a news report. You can do an interview. So it could be an actual interview with, say, somebody within your career-related study, or it could be an imaginary interview. So one of our grade 12 students this year actually did an interview, and she recorded it, and then she also had the whole transcript of what the discussion was between the people. You'll also see with all of these options that there is other criteria here. So your play and your film and your interview have to be a maximum of about 7 minutes on top of the essay, the shorter essay that you write. Okay, you can also do some kind of a storyboard or a photo essay. So you can have pictures. With your pictures, you do need to include some text in there. So some text explaining how this photo essay works. You can also do some kind of a presentation. So kind of like what I'm doing right now, presentation would work. So those are the different formats that you can do as well. So you're not, you don't have to do just an essay. If essay writing is not your thing, there are other options for you to include as well. Now, once you have gone through some of this process, you do have to do what's called a reflection planning and progress form. This is something that is found on ManageBack. There are 3 different reflections that you are completing throughout the duration of the process. When the first draft was handed in to me on ManageBack, for a lot of you, I commented that you need to make sure you go back and write out your first reflection. So these reflections here are, so I wrote a bunch of comments as well. So you need to go back and you need to read those comments about what is expected of you. So any concerns that you want to discuss with your supervisor, so that's either say Ms. Glover or myself, depending on which CP pathway you're in. Some reflections about perhaps choosing your ethical dilemma, what kind of roadblocks you came across. So maybe, for example, you chose an ethical dilemma, you started doing some research, you found that it was very one-sided, you weren't able to find a second or third viewpoint, so you dropped that idea and you came up with another one. Okay, so talking about that particular process, including maybe your interests in this. So for those of you in STEM, for example, if you are working in some kind of career-related field, and maybe this is something that you want to do when you leave high school, this could be something that's very interesting to you. So one of our grade 12s did their reflective project on an aspect of running, and that's because he was a very avid runner. So this is something that he knew a lot of information about, so he could tap into his own interests as well. So these are some of the things that you want to talk about in your reflection. Your second reflection would be talking about maybe some changes as you're going through the process, what has happened, how have you grown and developed through that. And then you have a final reflection, which is just concluding your whole process. Now, again, you want to make sure that you are focusing on these reflections, not on your essay per se, but on the process that you have gone through in writing this particular essay based on your ethical dilemma. So again, I'm going to show you where to find this on ManageBack. Okay, so on ManageBack, once you log in here, again, you'll see at the top service learning, language portfolio, and here's the reflective project. So when you click on reflective project, again, I'm going to pick somebody that hasn't done much on here. Okay, so let's go this way here. So once you get into here on your reflective project, the first thing is your worksheet. So here you're going to click on edit proposal. That button is also right here up at the top. So edit proposal, and here's you're going to talk about what your issue is, what your dilemma is, what are the different viewpoints, what your actual question is. So once you've taken this information from your issue and your dilemma, you're going to turn it into a question. And then any comments that you have about that. And then there's a drop down menu here to choose your supervisor. Okay, so these are all of our IB teachers. Your supervisor for you guys will either be myself if you're in STEM, or Miss Glover if you are a LEAP student. Okay, so once you complete that, you're going to click on Save Changes. Here, there is some space for you to put in some information as you're going through your research process. So this is the researcher's reflection space. You can click on Add New Entry, and this is, you could just type some notes here, anything that you're thinking about. And then the last part, this is your planning and progress form. So this is where you're writing in your reflections. So first of all, what is your career related study? So this is, what is your co-op placement related to? Okay, so this is what you're typing in here. You can change the dates. For the LEAP students that wrote their reflective project in first semester of this year, you want to make sure that your dates reflect that. So when you write your first reflection right over here, you want to change this date. So right now the date says today, but you want to make sure that you change this. I don't remember what octomester you guys had that in. I think it was the second or third octomester. So just make sure you choose a date within when you did that. Okay, and then you would press lock, so that locks that particular reflection. Your interim reflection, if I have given you comments, then you can write your interim reflection. You can make the date today or at some point now before June. And then finally, you have your final reflection. So when you submit your final draft, so right now, as I said before, if you've submitted something, you can still change it. I know that Ms. Glover would have marked it for your course, and for your course, that mark is done, but this still needs to be sent off to IB next year, so you do have opportunities to change it. And then your supervisor will write comments about your process. That's not for you, that's for either myself or Ms. Glover. And then you click on Save Changes. Now, where are you actually submitting your reflective project? So back here under worksheet where it says add documents, you will click on add a document, and then you can upload your file, find it on your computer. Now, it is very important that when you save these files, it just makes my life a lot easier. Your files need to be saved in a particular format. So I'm going to go back. Oops. Leah, oh no. No, I'm good, I got it. Maybe that's not gonna work for me. So you all have what's called a personal code. Your personal code is a combination of 3 letters and 3 numbers. This is what identifies you to IB. So if you don't know what your personal code is, I can email it to you. That's not a problem. And so as I said, is this working here? We're not working. Okay, we're gonna type it this way. Okay, so your personal code is 3 letters and 3 numbers. So let's call this ABC 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then you're going to put in your last name. So my last name is Mashrin. Is this working? No. And then for each subject that you submit, so if you are taking, you're all taking in LEAP the Sports and Exercise Health Science. So this is where you would type in your subject. Okay, so I would say Sports and Exercise Health Science. You can put it in as SEHS, that's fine. Wow, typing with a finger is terrible. And then you're going to call that your IA, for example. Okay, if you're taking biology, you would write in biology IA. If you're taking business, you'd write in business IA. If you're taking math, you would write in math IA. Here, this is your reflective project. So in this spot right here, you would type in reflective project. Okay, that's how I need these things to be saved, because when I upload them to IB, I have to be able to identify who you are. On your actual reflective project, though, within the body of your work, your name, and this is for all IAs, appear nowhere. Okay, so there's no title page. You don't need a title page for any of these things. No title page that says, you know, the date and your school and who your teacher is and who you worked with. I don't need any of that. All I need is your title, and then you can get started on the body of your reflective project. Okay, so your name doesn't go anywhere on here. The file name that you save this as is the only way that you are identified. Okay. So are there any questions? So again, you can raise your hand about anything that we've talked about so far. Any questions with reference to the service learning or the reflective project? Okay, so if there are no questions, I am going to send this recording to everybody so that you can use this to help you if you have any questions about that. Obviously, I'm always available by email. I can set up a Teams call if you have some questions about this. Just in terms, last thing in terms of due dates here. So for most of you, you have already done your first draft. So that is not an issue. But for those of you who are going through, so this is mostly for the STEM students, and there are some career related students that are in co-op right now. Your first draft is due in June, okay? If you've already submitted this, then perfect, you're awesome. Your second draft will be due at the beginning of, the middle of September, and then you also have to complete your second reflection. And then you have an opportunity to submit your final draft in October. Okay, so October is when everything has to be fully completed, and then I will be sending those off to IB. Okay, so if there are no questions, I thank you very much for joining me today. I will email this recording to everybody, and I hope you have a fabulous day and enjoy the sunshine. Thanks very much.
Thank you.